This is take number 72. There are two reasons why I'm making this video. The first is that not enough people talk about akathesia. And the second is that the way that akathesia is often described is really inadequate. I don't care how many people suffer from akathesia, what percentage of the population it is. It obviously can't be a large number of people, because if there was a lot of people suffering from akathesia, human society literally would not be able to function. But it doesn't matter how few people suffer from it or have gone through it. It's something so disproportionately awful that it deserves to be talked about a lot more. And the way it's currently talked about falls short, to say the least. It's easier for me to talk while drawing than it is for me to talk at the camera. Talking to the camera I find really unpleasant. And I think this stuff is important and worth talking about, so the drawing, which hopefully is not too painful to you, but if it is, you can just listen to the audio. The way that akathesia is often described is a certain kind of restlessness, and I actually scratched it out here. And here it said to not sit still, which that's from the Greek root of akathesia, means to not sit still. And a lot of times when you do a search on the internet about akathesia, it focuses on this inability to sit still and this restlessness. It's not inaccurate to say restlessness. That's part of it. But you know, a lot of times when you do a search on the internet for anything related to a medical condition, you end up with something that's almost worse than what you really have. Now, you've got a headache, and all of a sudden you do a search on the internet, and you've got a stroke. You know, you think you do. I know this because as someone who has a particularly high amount of health anxiety, I've done a lot of these searches. But when you search for akathesia, it's almost downplayed. You know, it's underexplained. It doesn't sound so bad. I mean, this kind of discomfort and restlessness, and that leads to people rocking back and forth or pacing around. And, you know, some of the websites will even say people find relief by rocking back and forth and pacing around. Relief is a very strong word. Relief suggests that there's some kind of resolution to the symptoms, that they've gotten better. When I was dealing with akathesia, the pacing around, it was not bringing relief. Relief is not the right word. It's just, it was less bad than standing still. It didn't feel good, like pacing around and rocking back and forth. It didn't feel good. It was still, even in that moment, with the movement, the worst physical state I've ever been in. Akathesia is like if we had a setting for our brain and body. You know, if you had a dial you could turn, and And on one end of the dial, you'd have like a feeling of bliss and contentment and inner peace and absolute physical comfort, like you're back in the womb. If that was on one end of the dial, the opposite end of the dial would be akathesia. You know, if you were engineering human beings as an organism, and you were looking for the setting, like okay, what's going to be the just sheer misery, the torture setting, it would be akathesia. You do see that description sometimes, and it's obviously from first-hand accounts. You know, you hear about people talking about being tortured from the inside, or a certain kind of chemical torture. The truth is, we don't really have the words to describe what akathesia is like. So that's part of the problem. I know when I was dealing with it, it felt to me almost like I was always on the edge of something, like something catastrophic. Like you were just riding, you were just right on the edge of something horrific happening. And I know when your neurons start really firing out of control, at a low level, it's just anxiety, and then on the other end, it can become a seizure. And I don't know what akathesia makes me feel like I'm on the edge of, but it's just this absolute lack of equilibrium. It's like this in-between state that's just horrific. You know, the depths of terror. Physical discomfort is also falls short, though, because it's this kind of full brain and body physical mayhem and terror that the other side of, I don't know what it is. I don't know if you're feeling like you're on the edge of having a seizure or what it is, but you can't get to, you know, whatever the thing is, whatever the acupuncture point would be that could provide some resolution to it. It doesn't come. So you stay in that in-between state, that state of horror. You know, it's like your brain and body want to tear themselves apart. And you almost feel like if they did that, maybe you'd actually get some relief. It's like there's the battle of matter and antimatter going on in every single one of your cells in your body. I mean, I don't know what the actual language that should be used to describe akathesia. Obviously, people have gone through it. Everyone probably has their own take on it. But I know when we search for the information, what we see on medical institution websites and psychiatry websites, talking about restlessness, you know, sometimes even comparing it to restless leg syndrome, which I've had before as well, and it's no picnic. I'm not trying to downplay that, but it's not akathesia. You know, if you did a Google search and that kind of auto-generated Google response that came up was something like, you know, this is arguably the worst physical state you could ever find yourself in as a human being, I would take that. You know, it's hard to find the right language to use, but I would take that. You know, obviously it's hard for one of these generic websites to make claims like that. But we need to do better than just restlessness or we need just a lot more people talking about akathesia. And part of the reason I'm making this video, it probably won't be the only one about akathesia. A lot of what I've talked about in some of the other videos is related to benzodiazepine withdrawal, which is what provoked my akathesia in my case. But I think akathesia itself merits multiple videos. And one thing I definitely just want to get across is that anyone that is going through it right now, I'm not going to make any, promises it's going to get better. And I know there's people that suffer from kind of near chronic akathesia that they've probably heard stuff like that before. It's going to go away, and it hasn't happened for them. In my case, in the case of benzodiazepine withdrawal, I had a relatively abrupt taper, and it did go away. And I count my blessings every day for that. But I just want to get across that whether you're going through it now or you have gone through it, there are people out here who know what it's like and are willing to listen and talk. Yeah, that's maybe the most important thing I can say about it. I think I'm going to stop for now because it's hard for me to articulate my thoughts when I'm talking to the camera. It's a little bit easier when I'm drawing. But I'm just feeling something tugging at me right now that's not a great feeling. That is supposed to be a pied kingfisher. You know what? Maybe I need one of these. Pied kingfisher is the largest hovering bird. Very beautiful bird. Looks a lot better than this drawing in real life. Eats a lot of fish. Oh, I don't know what I've done back here. What is this? That marker's shit.